Excited today to share with you friends, clients, somebody that I respect a ton, and that is Christian Kaba. So I'm really excited just to take everybody kind of through your story because it's powerful and it's one that I can certainly relate to. And we're going to dive into that. We're going to talk about how Christian, he's been in the game for a while. You know, you've had ups and downs in your business. You've had all the types of experiences that I think a lot of coaches who listen to this will probably go through. And I'm confident can learn a lot from what you've gone through, man. You've got some, you've cut your teeth, man. You've got some experience here. And so before we jump in, man, I just want to kick things off by asking you to kind of share your story. You know, you have a powerful, what we call origin story in terms of like what led to you wanting to be a coach and to pursue this mission. And if you don't mind us just like getting started there, man, like what led you to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that that's super important to have that origin story that's really deep. Your purpose is, you know exactly what your purpose is. And so for me, I watched my mom battle domestic violence for over 15 years and abandon a lot of her own needs in that process. And even prior to that, she was a single mom trying to navigate life on her own with myself and my sister. My father was from overseas, and so he wasn't as present in my life. So I was kind of already at like a really young age, had to learn how to like be the man of the house kind of situation. But then out of what I've saw my mom go through with the domestic violence growing up, I made it my life's mission to help moms never abandon their needs or struggle to see their self-worth. So I went from, in-person training, trying to help moms in a women's only gym, to then going online during the pandemic. And that way I could scale, be able to help more moms at that. But yeah, it's been quite a journey. And one that I feel, because of my why, has been a lot easier because I can like double down on my niche and really speak to them, and also speak from a place of pain, because I know what it feels like to go through that. I know that you said you resonate with my story as well, so I can connect with people very well that way. And I have no problem being vulnerable. So, without the pity party, of course, because we're not in my program. None of my clients are victims; they're survivors.
Man, I love that. Yeah, language, right? Language is important. Man, so you've had a lot of success in this industry, and before we hooked up with you, you'd had a bunch of like big months, some inconsistency. You're now hitting 40K months. And before we dive into like the business side of things, man, like I always think it's interesting when we work with clients. I really want to know more about the backstory, because it's not normal necessarily for somebody to come in and have success unless you kind of dig into their backstory and you find, oh, you've got chinks in your armor. You've got experiences. And so for me personally, I grew up in a pretty turbulent household as well. And that pain really drove me in a lot of ways and still kind of does. But like I always say, man, use whatever the fuel is. If it is pain, if it is trauma, use that, but that's probably going to burn out eventually, right? Can you kind of take me through that, where maybe it helped you in the beginning, and then where did you need to shift to maybe find different fuel?
Yeah. So one thing that I had written down in my journal a couple months ago is that like I feel like the reason why I really wanted to help moms is because I had this like burning resentment of my stepfather. And I was like, okay, I would go to the gym and I would just like work out with dark energy and like be pissed. And I ended up eventually I'll just be vulnerable as well, like ended up using or I could even say abusing steroids as well, because I felt that I needed to like be big and strong because I was so fragile growing up. Then I realized as I got older and as I got into my relationship with my partner and started making this about an impact as opposed to chasing my, an ego, this look, I realized if I can forgive him on my deathbed, then on his deathbed, I should say, then I might as well just forgive him now. And I did that. And then I stopped operating from a place of like resentment and like anger to fuel my work, and I think that that's when everything started to land a little bit more, because I wasn't speaking at people, like I was speaking to people from a place that was really positive. I don't know if that answers the question, but I definitely agree that if you're working from a place of anger, you eventually burn out. And because you can't heal other people if you're not healed yourself, because you know I forget how the quote goes, but if you don't heal, you'll bleed on people who never cut you. You know what I mean? And so, yeah.
Man, I love that. Yeah, thanks for opening up around that, Christian. I know we're like only 5 minutes in, but we're getting into heavy stuff. I never know how these conversations will go, but I appreciate you sharing that. And we always say that whatever the story is, the part of your past that is most scary to share is exactly the part of your story that's probably going to help the most people. So I ask, were you hesitant and worried at any point to be vulnerable, to be honest about, what your childhood was like, what your mission was? Did any of that raise fear for you? Or have you always been like, hey, I need to share this story so people are, aware?
I felt that the easiest way to connect with people was to hope that if I opened up myself, that they could resonate. And I wasn't afraid of what they thought about me. And I think the reason for that was like 5 years ago, I moved to China because I was an English teacher.
Wow.
It was what I first did out of college. I was like, what am I going to do to make good money right now? And I was working at McDonald's before that. I even got into a McDonald's commercial. It was hilarious because what I went to school for was like fitness and health promotions. And everyone was like, dude, like, is this you? And they were sharing it like on our college forum page and stuff. And I'm like, oh man. But yeah, I got there and I realized in Asia, there's so many people that like nobody can stop in the middle of traffic to like flip somebody off the finger if they like cut them off, because it's inefficient. And like people are just in their own lane. And I realized that nobody really cares about what somebody else is doing. Like I'll look at the corner of the street and there's somebody just squatting there, and then like just some other weird stuff. And then when I came home, it was just the culture shock. I was like, I don't care about what people think about me anymore. Like I'm just going to be myself unapologetically. And if people accept me, they accept me. If they don't, they don't. And then I know who my people are.
Man, that's powerful. Oh yeah. And it makes sense that you have the character that you do. I'll be honest, man, like you're one of my favorite clients in the sense that you're always asking for help. You're never afraid to ask for help. You always have your shit in order. It's like, hey, here's the variables, the details you need to know. What do you think I should do? And that doesn't just come by mistake, right? A lot of times when we join mentorships, a lot of people end up doing it for a need of validation rather than like true direction. And so I think part of your early history is you probably never got much validation as a kid, right? So it's like, why the fuck do I need to chase that now as an adult? Am I mistaken?
That's so true. No, I never really thought about it that way. I didn't get a lot of attention. I didn't see my dad very much. He was in the music industry, and he just was never really home. And then, like my mom was too busy in her relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into something that I know that you are passionate about, and I think will be really valuable to everybody listening. Two questions I have actually. First, before we jump into how you coach moms and how you've really, doubled down on learning the psychology of what motivates women particularly, and how you can help them with behavior shifts. Because we know it's so much more than just the X's and the O's, right? Like the macros and the cardio and all that. Like it's so much deeper than that. But I want to talk about that. But first, did you have any fears or hesitations around coaching women? Because like, man, I just find a lot of guys who want to, but they're like, well, I was never a woman or I was never a man, which in today's world, you could probably get away with just because everybody's lost their fucking minds. But did you ever have any just hesitations around that, right? Like, or have you always just like, yo, I am destined to help moms?
I did initially, like, and there were times where, people would say things like, oh, but you're not a mom. So, why would they trust you or why would they listen to you? But quick little backstory, like I worked at a women's only gym, and that was my first personal training gig, as it was in a women's only gym. So luckily I had that start of only working with women. And then when the pandemic happened, I started attracting some men, and it's just that they weren't as vulnerable as I was or willing to open up as much as I was. I didn't connect with them as well. And then like the women were opening up to me a lot more, and I'm like, I can work with this, because I like, you're right. You can't just, it's not just about workouts, it's not just about macros. You have to change the story that you've been telling yourself about yourself. You have to be open and vulnerable and share what you're struggling with. If you're not doing that, you're not going to change. And that's why when I do come to the live streams with you guys, like on the Zoom calls, I try to just let it all out. And sometimes I spit out way too much and I lose myself in the train of thought, but it's because I have so much to say, and it's because I'm not like afraid to do that. But I kind of lost my train of thought there, but I don't know if I answered your question. Does that answer your question?
It does, man. It does. And you can't like fake passion, man. You can't fake like the the violent conviction that you have about wanting to actually help people. And I think those who are listening to this, who are maybe trying to find that, I think it's important to pause and really do some like self-reflection and to figure out what are you truly passionate about solving, right? And a lot of times it's really deep stuff. And it's like, okay, well, whatever that deep thing is, like for you, it's helping, moms see themselves. It's helping them to have that self-belief and to look at themselves as goddesses that they are. And obviously that's not how you position it in your marketing, but it's kind of like you lead them in with what they want and then you truly give them what they need. And so did you ever battle with that where it's like, man, how do I like dumb down my marketing enough to capture the attention of my prospect? But then once I get them in my program, but change their fucking life, right?
Oh yeah, like some people think that that's bad. Like I went viral in a video once on Facebook and somebody was like, you can't burn belly fat. And I'm like, no, like I 100% agree. Like you can't. But if you do these exercises and if you look at in the description, it says you must ensure that you're getting in enough protein, calories. Like you can lose fat everywhere. So you will lose belly fat, but you won't target it. And I said that to her because you have to give people what they want and then give them what they need. And that was like a hard thing for me to swallow at first because, I never want to mislead anybody. That's not what it is. It's the fact of the matter is people have problem areas that they feel very self-conscious about. And when they get into our program, we change the focus on getting smaller or like, focusing on a specific area of their body to just focusing on getting stronger and like nourishing their body from a place of self-love, as opposed to demonizing certain foods and looking at it as good and bad, etc. Because you can't build a body you love from a place of hate. And like, that's really what we focus on a lot in a lot of our program there. But yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I hope those listening to this realize that, because otherwise you have to put your own needs on the back burner and think what's going to result in helping the most people. And I don't like the way that people are in that sense. I'd love to just be able to, even with IFCA, I'd love to show up and say, hey, we're going to help you solve your money mindset issues and become better leaders and all these things. We do talk about that. At the same time, people want to like have more freedom and make more money. So it's like lead them in with what they want, give them what they need. And so I think it's cool to see that in real time with you, especially somebody who really cares. You are not just some shammy marketer, dude. You have like deep results with your clients. And as we talk about results, share with me some of your kind of go-to methodologies. This might be a broad question. But when it comes to like weight loss psychology, especially for women, what are some things that you have found to be maybe core tenets and core pillars, maybe frameworks that you use? I don't know if that question is specific enough, but can you run us through some of those things?
Yeah. So, the first thing is like measuring their success, I find, is the first thing that I really need to focus on. Because if they don't feel that they're being successful, then they're not going to be motivated to want to continue after 30 days or whatever. So I determine whether or not they have this good relationship or not with the scale. And then, I really ensure that they don't compare themselves to anyone else in the program, because they are not like anyone else. They're their own unique snowflake, is the way that I say it. So you'll never see a snowflake look the same as the next one that's kind of falling. And for that, I want them to take a lot of pride in themselves and realize that they're in their own chapter of their story. So as the quote goes, like, you can't compare your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 10. So that's like the first thing is I actually lower their expectations, because a lot of women come into our program having done 10, 20 different programs. And in the past, they've lost 20 pounds in like 30 days or like 60 days. And I realized, I'm like, this isn't going to be you. Like, if you want quick results, you're not going to be happy probably in this program right away, because we want to make sure that the changes that you're making are going to last you a lifetime. And so it might take you a little while to get to your goal, but once you get there, you won't care about how long it took you to get there. Like, you won't care about that. So I'm like, I first focus on identity shift in that first month. Then after that, we really double down. I'm like, okay, you understand macros. You can fit in the foods that you and your family love. There's no excuse there. You've figured out how to make this work with your schedule. The workouts that we use in our program are like 30, 40 minutes. I do prioritize like lifting heavier, not focused on boot camp, circuit style training. A lot of people think, well, if you're working with moms, shouldn't you do super quick workouts that are like supersets and, drop sets and all these things? But to be honest, like, I like to simplify everything in the beginning And then as they build more trust with themselves, because they've gained consistency and they've kept the promises that they've made with themselves, they just keep getting better and better. But I think that it's tough because in the industry, everybody pushes, everybody gives up what they want most for what they want now.
Yeah.
And that's the issue, right? Is I try to get them to remember that. And we have a lot of support. Like we have a mental health specialist on our team. We focus on a lot of mindset. And then we have one of our coaches on our team that just focuses on like nutrition and then obviously workouts. She's really good with that. But yeah, some people just need a little bit more of like that identity change, because it is more than macros and it is more than workouts. So but yeah, comparison is the thief of joy. And I think that that's what really kills a lot of these women's momentum in the beginning. And that's like the most important phase of the program, is just that beginning stage.
Yeah, man, I love that. It's no different than, I was thinking about this recently, because even in business, and those listening to this, you might already have feelings of comparison to Christian. Why am I not as far as Christian? Why am I not doing $40,000? Why don't I have a mental health counselor in my program? Why? And it's interesting, because when it comes to like sports, we would never look at a LeBron James, and let's say we wanted to be a great basketball player, but we would never look at LeBron and be like, why am I not as good as LeBron? Because it's so easy to see like, well, I'm not 6'8". I'm not a like 0.0001% genetic phenom. I also didn't have the same childhood as LeBron, right? Where guys like him, some of them, the only way that they survive is by excelling, at sports or whatever it might be. And it's easy to not compare ourselves to people like LeBron, right? But if you look at somebody like me and you and I, the character traits that we have that maybe have come as a result of our past, the work experiences that we've had, how long we've been actually doing this, none of that sits on the surface where you can't just see it. So we're so much quicker to compare ourselves, right? And I think that's so important to recognize in business. Like if I take a 50-pound dumbbell and I put it in front of you, Christian, and then I put it in front of Jax, who's in the other room, who's 9 months old, it's a way different experience, right? And it's no different with anything else that you do, right? Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. If you put 450 on a 500 on a deadlift, bar right now, you did it, and I stepped in front of it. I can do it. Like, you're strong. So
I'm not pulling 450 right now. Maybe back in my heyday. Maybe back when I was running gear too.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, look, I want to ask you some questions around like what led you to us, right? So where did you first find IFCA? And I'm curious, just what were the immediate challenges that you were hoping to solve?
Yeah. So I heard of you guys through Jeff Magnuson, and he was crushing it. So I saw that he was pulling like 20, 30K months, and I was like, okay, this guy is absolutely killing the game. And he came from my mentorship program. And at that time, I was struggling just with systems in my back end. And, I couldn't sustain those months because I would burn out. I had 60 clients myself, and now I'm down to 10. And I have the same amount of clients that I had back then right now. But like I'm working a little less, and I noticed that Jeff was doing the same. And yeah, at the same time, I was like, I'm going to hire this guy as my own fitness coach too. So yeah, I hired him as a fitness coach because I always love having the same. I realized that if I want to take my clients to the next level, like I need to be willing to take myself there as well. So I was just like, I'm going to go all in with this guy's idea. So then when I came in, I just told Lacey, who's my success coach, that, every time I get to a 20K month, I drop back down to 7K, 5K, and then 10K. And it's stressful. And I just couldn't manage it all on my own. Every time that I would bring on a team or somebody to come into the DMs for me, it would only last a couple of months. But since I've been in the IFCA, there's been a lot more stability in my business. Jordan has a document or some sort of resource that always like just blows me away. I'm like, how the fuck does this guy have everything? Like, it doesn't make sense. Just thinks about everything. And then, yeah, I just feel a lot more confident in what I do now because I have the resources and I have that additional one-on-one support as well. That's a big one that I was missing, because I felt that in other mentorship programs, I didn't have that one-on-one. It was a lot of group stuff. And Lacey has been really great at giving me that one-on-one. So Lacey, if you're listening to this, you're the best. I appreciate you.
Shout out Lacey. She's just a fucking dope chick too. Like we always joke that Lacey and I are so similar. Like we're like when we hang out together, it's like dangerous because we're always like losing our shit and forgetting what's going on, but man, she is rock solid. I love Lacey.
Yeah. And the thing that actually helped me the most was Jeff told me, he's like, I'm like, what can I do to really get ahead here? He was like, honestly, if you don't implement what Lacey tells you to do, she's not going to tell you again. And then you're not going to be good at what you do. So I was kind of intimidated by Lacey at first because I wanted to impress her, but I knew that she wouldn't have any of my BS. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go in here and crush this. And everything she told me to do, I implemented immediately. And that's where I am today.
Man, amazing. Yeah, Lacey makes everything look so easy. It's funny, but even it, like some people will compare themselves to Lacey, which is interesting. But Lacey grew up in a house of entrepreneurship. Her dad was a very successful CEO and led big teams. So she understands like leverage and time management and all these things to another level. Like Lacey, dude, she still has a 50, 60K a month business. And like basically every time I text her, she's either like rollerblading or fucking wake surfing or like, oh, I'm just chilling on the beach. I'm like, man, you're impressive. So tell me about this, Christian. What are you, well, I'm going to ask you two more questions, then we'll round out. What can you tell me about a time when you felt super stuck in your business, like really challenged? I know you've kind of mentioned the sort of ups and downs, the hamster wheel effect of like having to constantly sign new clients or else the business was going to flounder. How did you work through maybe like one key big challenge? And maybe did IFCA help? Maybe not. But what were some like key takeaways or ways that you worked through like one big problem in your business?
Okay, the first thing that comes to my mind is I remember I was traveling in our Mercedes Sprinter van. Like after my first year in coaching, I saved up quite a bit of money and I got like the Sprinter van and I was traveling in it in from Toronto to northern Vancouver Island. And I got to this really small town that didn't really have anything, and my diesel heater broke down. And for like a day or two, my partner and I were like, we had no heat in our van. It was freezing cold. And so I remember I was burnt out at the same time, which is why I went up island, because I just wanted to get a break. But it came at the worst of times because I didn't really have much money and my diesel heater broke down. So I took it to this mechanic. And I remember thinking to myself, like, if only I had somebody else on my team that could help, with the slack here. Like, I don't have the best service out here, blah, blah, blah. And if only now I would have had, like, if only then I should say I had, Jen on my team crushing it as she is with all of the rest of our clients. And I had my assistant in there as I do right now, like giving our clients the support that they need through my account and through her account. And the community was built up the way that it is now because we are so consistent with delivering all the time. I think that I wouldn't have stressed as much, and things would have went pretty well. But then for the next 4 or 5 months, because that one setback of the diesel heater and then spending money out of pocket that I didn't already have, and then coming back and being exhausted. This is like in the December month. I ended up finding you guys the following September. Those next 8 months were super tough because I was like, I can either fold my business right now and just give up and, work at, or I literally remember last February, I applied to work at Orange Theory Fitness.
Oh man.
And I'm like, this is so bad. Like, this is rock bottom. Like I chose that as my rock bottom.
Yeah.
I was like, this is it. And then I was like, fuck that. No way. And then I ended up going into mentorship again. It worked a bit just because I had the community, and that gave me the inspiration I needed. And then I was like, okay, I need to do something else. And I found you guys at that point. And I think that the biggest thing that moved the needle forward was not trying to find the issue myself. Like, you can't read the prescription from inside of the bottle. I was trying to find the answers everywhere on my own, and I just kept burning myself out. And then when I came into IFCA, you guys had the learning path and everything was highlighted for me to watch. I have ADHD to the max. So I'm like, if I'm not focused on like seeing things highlighted, like do this, that, this, then I'll just try to do everything. And so and then I'll end up getting nothing done at all. So yeah, having that guidance, that support on what I need to focus on most, which was building my back ends at that time, so I could step away from the business and work on the business instead of constantly working in the business, made all the difference. But yeah, I don't think that I could have gotten here if it wasn't for that situation though. So if anybody's listening to this right now and they're in a really dark place in their business or in life right now, like it's moments like this right now that you'll need to be able, that you'll need to share to somebody else, just like I am to you, to help them get over what they're going through. Because like your skills and the traits and the beliefs and the characteristics about yourself, they're built in adversity. So just like keep leaning into adversity.
Man, that's powerful. Two takeaways from that, and then we'll kind of round out. Like a lot of times when we're in the peak, or the not the peak, but like the trough of the story, every story needs to have conflict and resolution, right? And it's like a lot of times we're in that deep despair moment. That's the most exciting part of the movie. That's the part of the movie where you're at the edge of your seat and you're like, fuck yeah, I know that the hero of this movie is now about to have the transformation and the resolution. But it's like, think about a movie that you love in your life. Was there never any dark periods? Of course not. And it's like, you don't want to create a shitty movie for your life, right? That has no ups and downs. It's like, that's what makes a story great. And I always have to remind myself of that too, because it's a lot easier said than done when you're on the other side of it. Right. But the other thing is, man, that I'm really glad that you've taken away is there's a quote from this book called Ready, Fire, Aim that I love. He says, if your business solely depends upon you for everything, you don't truly have a business, you have a job. And it's the worst job in the world because you work for an absolute lunatic, which is ourselves. And it's true, man. Like at the beginning, sure, you're going to be on your own, but at some point the business can't depend solely on you, or else it's just a tough business to run.
Oh man, yeah, because you're like you can find, for me, I don't know if this resonates with anybody else, but even still to this day, I will find problems that don't exist in so many places. Like I'll just like think that this is a problem and that is a problem. And then yeah, you become your own worst enemy. So definitely having a team, having a mentor, something like that to be able to filter out whatever's going on through your mind that's BS, like super key to success.
Yeah. Well, man, thank you so much for sharing all this. You're packed with wisdom and experience, man. And I just appreciate what you're doing, especially with moms. I'm a mama's boy, dude. So the fact that you're making a legit impact into how mothers not only perceive themselves, but thinking about the generational change that creates, right? When you see a mom who shows up with her power, like thinking about how that impacts her friends, her kids, just that ripple effect, man. I think that's just really powerful, man. So I appreciate you for that. And as a friend and as a client, man. So anyways, anywhere that everybody can follow you, keep up with your story, maybe even reach out and connect, where can they find you?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm Christian Kaba Fitness. On Facebook, just Christian Kaba. And my podcast is the Starting Over Strong podcast. It's just where I help women who have struggled with domestic violence or who are struggling to get started on their fitness journey postpartum. I drop some value in there. I'm getting back to posting more episodes there, so you guys can follow me on that. And Jordan, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate you so much. And yeah, you've changed my life. So thank you.
Man, of course, it's a pleasure. And guys, make sure to check out that podcast. Make sure to share the podcast with anybody that you know who could value from that, because domestic violence is a big problem, and we need to raise more awareness around it and empower people to step away, to be their own person, man. So thank you for what you do, man. I appreciate you. I'm going to sign off.